Good afternoon and welcome to the ImageScan Holdings PLC Annual General Meeting proceedings. Throughout this recorded presentation, attendees will be in listen-only mode. For those joining online, questions are encouraged. You can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply click Q&A, type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question that it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions and publish responses where appropriate to do so. I'd now like to hand you over to Bill Moore, Executive Chairman. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Bill Moore, Executive Chairman of the company. 1:30 p.m. and I'd like to welcome you to this AGM, both those of you that are in our offices here and those of you that are observing via the online platform. We're conducting this not in a conference room, but actually in the R&D area of the business, and our engineers are working from home today so that we can do that. With me on the platform today, the full board. So Richard Lever on the left, Sarah Atwell-King next to me, Vince Deary on the other side, Tim Jackson, our other non-exec, and also with us on the table here is Gervais Cox from Neville Registrar, who's going to help us with the formal part of the meeting. For those of you in the room, there is no planned fire drill today, so if the fire alarm sounds at any time during your visit, please follow myself or one of the directors as you're directed to the fire exits. The plan for today's meeting is that we're going to start with a run through of a brief presentation. And then we'll take questions on that presentation and then move to the formal business of the meeting at the end of the session. So that's the order in which things will run. So the presentation gives a very brief overview of the company. I think most people attending will know us. Talks through, with help from Sarah, our results for the last year. Vince is going to talk through what we're doing with our products and our markets. I will then come back and address the forecast for the business and the information in the trading update that we gave out this morning, and then we'll move on to questions after that. So that's the format for the meeting. So the first slide gives a brief summary of the company. I don't intend to go through this in any detail. As you know, we were a spin-off from Nottingham Trent University with a group of X-ray technologies, have been listed on AIM since 2002. And our main areas of activity are X-ray inspection systems for security and industrial applications. We have 19 staff plus our two non-execs, all based here in near Loughborough, and we supply all around the world. We're very much an export business. We announced a few months ago some changes in the structure and of the board and the roles of people on the board as part of our succession planning. And the organisation now has me in the role of Executive Chairman, although I am in that role continuing to take control of our product development programme. Sarah's position as Finance Director doesn't change, and Sarah looks after the finance and governance, and is the company secretary in that role as well. Vince takes on a role of interim CEO, and Richard and Tim are our two non-execs. Because obviously Vince, that's an important change really, Vince moving into that role. I'm going to ask him just to take a moment to sort of introduce himself to the attendees of the meeting and talk a little bit about his ambitions in that role.
Okay, thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everybody. As Bill mentioned, I'm very pleased to take up the position of interim CEO I've been with ImageScan since 2008, and in all those years I've begun to understand the mechanics and the workings of not only the business, but the people within the business, and also our markets and target markets. So I bring a wealth of experience in terms of what I understand about ImageScan to go forward, and also my previous experience before ImageScan was involved in generally building networks, introducing new products and new commercializing products into the markets of oil, petrochem industry, the automotive industry with metrology applications, the industrial power generation and control industry. And prior to that, I have a background in electrical and manufacturing engineering. So in the next 6 months of the interim CEO period, I'd like to build on the work that Bill and myself have been undertaking together to use the extensive network that we've built up. As Bill mentioned, we are predominantly an export company, and we've got a really good route to market. And what we're trying to do now is give that route to market more opportunity to make sales. So those sales will come from our own homegrown products, 100% developed in-house, through products that we are developing in conjunction with other partners, technology partners, and also third-party product sales. So we're going to add all of those to the product mix, take them to the market through the established network, which is a very, very strong network, and then try and maximize our sales using those processes there. So we understand that that's going to take a little bit of time, and what we're doing now is heavily marketing some of these new products and some of the new offerings that we have, taking those to market via demonstrations or a lot of online work, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. We understand that it's going to be challenging coming through the COVID period, but we're building ourselves a good product line to be able to do that.
Thanks, Vince. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Sarah to take a slide or two to run through our results for the year ending September 21.
Thank you. Well, hopefully you've all seen our annual report already, which shows we made a profit of £189,000 pre-tax. If you've looked at the annual report, you'll see that we also actually claimed some R&D tax credit, which brought our post-tax profit up a little bit further. That profit was built on sales, which was slightly down on the previous year, but the product mix that made up those sales was a particularly strong one, which meant that we actually delivered a slightly higher gross profit than the previous year, which was excellent to see. It's a tribute also to our team here on the operational work that they were doing to drive down the costs, etc. as well. And the other place that, the other reason we drove to such a good profit was our overheads were down compared to previous years. Now, in part, that was a one-off because there was some COVID benefits. We got a little bit of furlough money where we've done targeted furlough work. And we obviously couldn't do things like shows and people couldn't travel. So that brought it down a little bit. The second reason why our overheads were a little bit down was that some of our R&D projects that developed the new CXI and the ASI hit the threshold for capitalising the expenses. Historically, we've expensed our R&D expenditure, whereas when we hit a certain threshold, we take them to the balance sheet and then impair them over the lifetime of the project, and a couple of those hit that. And then the final thing was we took the decision in a couple of areas not to spend money, obviously, because of uncertain times. And those all together delivered a profit of 189,000 pre-tax, which was very pleasing. I popped in a second slide, and I do need to apologise to you because it is just a mass of numbers, but I did just want to highlight the strength of the business in terms of its working capital. We haven't made this profit on manipulating our numbers. This is all based on good trade. And if you just look at the bottom line, you can see over the last 3 years, in line with the profit of the last 2 years, our working capital has increased. And particularly if you look at the very top line, we've got good cash balances. We have a good cash generation model, and therefore we're in a good place to take advantage or meet the challenges of the year ahead of us. And that's really what I wanted to say today.
Thank you, Sarah. So now I'm going to move across to Vince, who's going to talk about some of our newer developments in our products and markets.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at 3 strands to increasing the product range. And on the slide here, we're showing one of the strands, which is working in partnership with technology partners from across the world. So the core product for 3D X-ray has been the portable X-ray equipment that we use for the EOD, IED world, counter surveillance measures or customs and exercise checking. We operate in the medium to high level of that market. And what we've introduced here in partnership with the technology provider is a product that is at the very top end of the market for us. So that's both in terms of price and in also technical capability. And not only have we entered that top end market, but we've entered into that top end market at the top of the specifications of that market. So the product capabilities that we show here are the maximum in terms of resolution. In fact, they are class beating in terms of resolution and some of the penetration that we can achieve with this product. So what we've done is we've taken the learning from the existing product line that we have on the portable side and maximized the potential in this high-end product here. So the amorphous silicon technology that we're using predominantly comes from the medical industry, but we've had this system purposefully customized, redesigned from the ground up. So that although we're using the background from the medical industry, this has been very much designed for the ruggedized EOD environment. So if we move on to the next slide, how we're also looking at expanding the product range is the in-house development. And the product we see on the far left-hand side there is the CXI. Now, this is something that we've 100% developed in-house, leveraging the technology that we've already developed on the portable X-ray, but deploying that in a cabinet-based system. But in the cabinet-based system, it's deployed in such a way that it's really aesthetically pleasing, and the volume of that cabinet itself is of a size that takes it out of just the traditional mail screening world where these systems were used into the ability to use it as a front of house in a corporate building or a high net worth individual's residence, whereby they can not only scan mail, but they can also scan cabin bags. On the second partnership we've noted there, we've talked about the amorphous silicon, that top end product that we're introducing in portable X-ray. So we've already done that. And then the final slide there, the final strand, is the third-party solutions that we're going to introduce. And these are all going to be complementary technologies that we have. So we're already working in the IED world, we're working in the counter-surveillance world. So what are the tools do those teams require? What are the tools do those organizations wish for? So, for instance, we're showing there a chemical detector. So as well as X-raying a suspect device, you can then check it for chemicals, or even in the customs and excise world, you can check for drugs capability with something like that. So we're going to roll a number of those out, and we've been doing that over the past few months. And so we've got some quite high expectations, because as I said, the partner network is strong. They're just crying out for more material to sell. And taking it to market, it has been challenging over the COVID period, but one of the things you may be able to see, those of us that are with us, is the demonstration facility we've created downstairs, and using technology just as we're using today to talk to the shareholder base online. We do this with our own products. So we can give a demonstration to our partner or our customer in Oman or Ecuador or in Hong Kong, which we have done, and we've actually made sales from the initial inquiry right through to actually raising the PO through that media, which is quite incredible, really, when traditionally that was very labor intensive. Somebody would have to fly out to the territory, do the demonstration in person. And you'll never get away from that being the ideal scenario, but the ability that we have now with that online demonstration facility is superb. So one of the other things I would note is some notable successes, particularly in the UK. We've had some good successes with British police forces, with the MOD, with the RAF, which we've talked about, but also we've been able to extend our reach geographically as well. And one of the most recent partners has been in Australia, and they've already made sales in a very short period of time. So we're actively striving to build the network, but also to give the network much greater product range to promote. So I think at that, I'll transfer back to Bill.
So I'd like to. So we've talked about the results for the year ending the previous financial year, September to 2021. Vince has talked about the new products that we're putting out into the market and some of the successes that we've had in the in the sales environment. And those things contributed to some extent to a good second half of last year. And then in the first half of this year, as we explained in our trading update this morning, what was starting to look like a bit of momentum in the back end of last year somewhat stalled. And we've found orders that we were hoping to bring in around about Christmas time in the early part of this year. Those programs were being delayed. And that's perhaps not a completely unusual experience, of course, in bearing in mind that most of our business is overseas and is with governments. And as the Omicron variant of COVID moved through different parts of the world, it's impacted some of our customer base. And we, alongside that, in the automotive industry, where the automotive industry has been probably one of the worst hit sectors, we've seen car plants operating, either not operating or operating at reduced capacity. And that's fed down to the manufacturers of catalytic converters, who are our customers, who've looked at their global footprint and have, for example, started moving scanning machines from one plant to another, whereas we might have hoped they would buy new machines. And that resulted, not just in the last few months, in fact, with orders that we'd been told we were going to get not actually coming to us. Prompted by that, and conscious of the need to, that we were with a need to look sort of deeply into how our second half was going to progress, the board conducted a very detailed review with the full sales team of the opportunities in our second half. And in some ways, what we saw was quite promising. You know, we're, as I mentioned in the thing, we're testing parts for new automotive manufacturers, and that's something we've always wanted to do, is to expand that product base. We could see a diverse range of opportunities, particularly across the Middle East and Far East, in programs that were engaged, may in some cases already have been through the selection process, and be positive that those programs are coming our way. And so that's all good. However, what we're wary of is, having seen programs being delayed in the first half, is making over-optimistic, the dangers of making over-optimistic assumptions about how fast those projects and those programs around the world are going to turn into orders and sales for us. And I think if we'd been expecting to start the second half with a nice deep order book, we wouldn't have been putting the cautious measures out we did this morning. But that order book isn't yet there, and so we're reliant on going through the full cycle of bringing in orders, doing the build, and delivering equipment to make sales in the second half. And as a result of that, we've taken a cautious view of the second half and briefed WH Ireland of that, and they've put out a forecast that shows us making a loss at the year end. Obviously, we hope to do better than that. We can see the opportunities out there that would allow us to do better than that, but with the aim of good sort of shareholder communication and not over-promising and under-delivering, we've put out a cautious message in our trading update this morning, and I wanted to explain the thinking, I suppose, that led to that, all shareholders, and we're shareholders up here for the most part, can be assured that now that we can finally start, at least in some parts of the world, to get on planes and go and visit customers, now that we're starting to see trade shows happen where we can go out and demonstrate our new products to multiple customers, we're going to leave no stone unturned to turn that situation around and pull those orders forward, rather than allowing them to drift back, and to identify new opportunities. And we feel that we've got the product range now to do that. One thing Vince didn't mention about the new highly integrated portable X-ray system is the unit ticket price of that unit is about twice what a typical portable X-ray sale would have been for us in the past. So as that sales of that unit start to build up, they'll have a disproportionate effect on our turnover. So that's what we're going to be striving to do, so long as other countries, albeit a little bit slower time, follow the path that the UK is doing to opening up and moving to living with COVID and allowing travel and allowing trade shows to take place. So that's the direction of travel there, and we're dependent on that direction of travel to get these new products out to new customers. And we will, of course, keep shareholders informed as that develops. So I did just want to expand a little bit on the trading update we put out this morning in that way. This slide summarizes growth opportunities, a lot of which Vince has really talked about. So, both building on the strength of our current product range, expanding that product range, and that in turn is allowing us to access new markets, both geographical markets. You've seen announcements from us recently about North America, both US and Canada. We've made sales in the last year. We're growing actually in our home market, which is one that historically hasn't been that exciting for us, with opportunities and contracts that we've had from both the military and police, and other markets like Australia over the last year or so have been good for us. So expanding our product range, expanding our geographical markets, expanding the market sectors that we address. So we're not just all about bomb squads now. We're about access control. We're about customs. We're about, with the SIRS-Tech relationship, hazmat, hazardous material investigation teams. And these things, particularly the larger units, the sort of checkpoint cabinet and conveyor X-ray machines, will also contribute more service and support revenue. And one thing we're very keen to do is to increase our recurring service and support revenue, and over time reduce the amount of our income that's dependent on individual government orders. And because as we've seen in the last 6 months, you need a few delays in there, and it has an adverse impact on the business. So this is the drive over the next 6 months or so, as Vince highlighted. So just to summarize then, as I said, the business has continued to be impacted, not just by COVID, but by other factors and secondary factors from COVID, such as the automotive industry. And we're working very hard to get beyond that, and hope to do so over the next 6 months. Our new portable X-ray machine, which those of you that are visiting in person here will be able to see working, or see demonstrated after the meeting. And we're always delighted to welcome other shareholders here to demonstrate our products and give them a view of the company. We've, as Vince said, acquired some important new customers. Our investment in the US, which has taken a while to come to fruition, is now coming to fruition with orders in both local police forces and federal government agencies in the States. Those are important developments for us as well. I've talked a bit about the management team restructure and the opportunities that the business has to grow going forward. And we're all, as a team, in fact, everybody in the company, very much dedicated to doing that. So with that, I will hand briefly over to Paul, who's put the online platform from us together for us, to explain for online attendees how the Q&A session will operate.
Bill, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all for the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, do please continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen if you're online. And I'd also like to remind you that recording this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Bill, if I could actually hand back to you, short interlude, I know, for both Q&A from those attendees online and the floor. If I can ask you to read out any questions and give responses where appropriate to do so for the online attendees, and take any questions from the floor, and I'll pick up from you at the end, please, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll pick up an online question first, give you in the room another moment to think if you've got questions you want to ask. A tricky one here. How do you see the current geopolitical situation, Russia-Ukraine, impacting our markets? Obviously, that is very fast developing. It's only really overnight that's developed to what we see at the moment. My own view, and I'll let Vince jump in as well, is that at least as things are at the moment, that shouldn't significantly impact sort of existing security procurement processes. Obviously, if it's something that spreads and impacts defence spending in other countries, then you might see some change of prioritisation, which could favour us or not favour us. So I find it difficult to give a definitive answer to that. I don't know, Vince, if there's anything you'd like to
just expanding what Bill was saying, we do actually have a couple of installations of portable X-ray in Ukraine, but it's not a very large part of our market, and Russia has never really been a part of our market, and we have no ongoing or foreseen projects in Russia. The Russians have tended very much on security to buy their own homemade product.
Thanks, Vince. So I'm going to take a question now relating to our cash position and how the expected poor performance in the first half is going to impact our cash. So I'm going to let Sarah take that one.
Well, obviously, to a certain degree, we're going to see a reduction in our cash. As I alluded to earlier, we started with really strong cash position, and our business model on the whole is to be cash neutral. So customers actually pay us an element, ideally if I get my own way, 100% of order cost before as they book, which means that our cash remains quite strong throughout. So we will see a reduction in the first half year. With the orders coming in the second half, we're going to see ourselves going back to same sorts of levels, depending on exactly where we get to at the end of the year with our sales.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to take a question that was submitted in writing now, which is one for you as well, is how we see the growth in inflation affecting the business.
I think there are a couple of impacts on our cash. One is obviously going to be the national insurance increase that's coming up. That's going to be across the board for everybody. Our components aren't overly impacted by inflation by themselves. However, we have electronic components, and if you recall, sort of a couple of months ago, electronic components were quite a significant issue. And what we actually did as a business was buy forward electronic components, unfortunately at a slightly higher cost, but we therefore have secured them. And had we tried to secure them now, we're told by our suppliers that we would probably pay double what we paid back then. So we're going to see a little bit of inflationary impact, but not huge amounts, I don't think. And certainly we're working behind the scenes to keep driving down our costs wherever we can.
Are there any questions from people in the room? Yes, sir.
Last time we were talking about an ex-American EOD expert. Is he still working in the company?
So the question is about our ex-American EOD expert, and is he still in the business? He is, and I'm going to ask Vince just to touch on the work that John Howell's been doing and how that's led to our orders in North America.
Yeah, so those of you who may have seen John before, he's a very impressive character. He's got a really strong CV in terms of both EOD work and X-ray in general. So he spent many years in the Marines EOD and ended up being a senior coach for the EOD teams. Also then moved to the courthouses and prison services, where he was an inspector and tester on X-ray baggage machines and the walk-through metal detectors. So John has been doing a lot of work in terms of marketing and trying to place our product. The North American market tends to buy its own homegrown equipment. So, and what we've been trying to do, and what we have been doing successfully, is taking our product out there, demonstrating the differences between the product we have and the product that they normally use. And that's largely based on things like resolution and materials discrimination. And we've made a lot of strong marketing messages around the materials discrimination, because in terms of being able to do that in the portable equipment, we are the strongest player in the market doing that. And it's not a feature that the American market has particularly adopted. But with the sales that we have made, that's where John has been out there. He's demonstrated, he's coached, and he's trained these people. So we've done that with bomb squads and also with the federal agency. So we do see that process taking time, and COVID has obviously restricted its exposure, but we've moved more online to get those messages across. And I don't know, many of you may have seen that the online messaging and presence has increased quite dramatically over the past 6 months. So he's still very much with us and working hard.
Thanks, Vince. So I was going to pick up another written submission here, really to do with the organisation of the business under the announcement that we made, or the change that we implemented at the start of the year. And just to sort of, in answering that question, to explain that the sales team still individually reports to Vince, but he has passed over responsibility for some groups of customers within that sales team. And we've also been lucky enough to recruit a very experienced sales manager. In fact, she's in the room with us, for those of you attending here, from Westminster Security. And Eve's picked up some overseas territories, but is also very strongly focused on growing our activity in the UK, and is starting to have success with that. In fact, we picked up a small order from a UK police force that has entirely been Eve's work just this morning, I think.
Indeed,
yes. That means that we can balance Vince's time between running sales and taking on more responsibility in the interim CEO role. The other thing, obviously, an organisation like ours that's very focused on R&D, that's obviously quite a time commitment. And I've always, the time that I've been here, taken a high degree of responsibility for the working with Vince, obviously, but in terms of defining product strategy and managing the R&D, the R&D activity, at least in terms of the high level of what they're doing. So that's something where Vince's role hasn't really changed. He obviously, represents the customer view, if you like, into that discussion. And the other thing I would say is someone who's not on the table today, isn't on the board, but a very strong part of our day-to-day management team, is our operations manager, Anthony Benny, who's very experienced and works across both manufacturing and operations, and managing our supply chain, and the things that Sarah's talked about in terms of managing supply chain through sort of global difficulties has very much been Anthony's responsibility. So at the moment, I would say it's working well in this current structure, and I think we're managing to balance that load. So just a quick one on from online. I mentioned in the announcement today that we've been testing parts for a fuel cell company as part of our plan to diversify our industrial activity. And somebody's asked Vince how that opportunity arose, which is very much
no problem. If any of you have been keeping abreast of the news, there was Johnson Matthey is a company. They had a lithium-ion portfolio which they've finished with. They've closed that business down. They're going to focus on other parts of the business. Well, one of the contacts I had there when we were dealing with them there has moved to another organisation, and it was a personal contact between myself and the guy who used to work there. We did some work for him whilst he was at the lithium-ion manufacturing position, and he could see the benefits of potentially using X-ray in his current fuel cell application.
Thank you, Vince. So just going to pick up another couple of questions then. One is, again, it's a written question in relation to RiseStep and RiseStep's shareholding in the business. I think most of you will be familiar with the background of that. And I think, as I've said before, that shareholder has been with the company for quite a long time now, and holds a significant part of the company. It is our view that that shareholder would want to divest that holding in the long term. We have an idea of what needs to happen for us to be able to help that shareholder. We know what she's looking for those shares, and one of the reasons that we're so focused on organic growth, apart from that's what companies need to do, is that there's a point there as that feeds into the share price that we're going to be able to help that shareholder at least reduce that stake in the business. We recognise that with what went on when we got very close to making an acquisition in 2018, but ultimately was stopped by the fact that that shareholder couldn't bring herself to allow us to sell new shares and dilute her shareholding at the price that was prevailing at the time. Obviously, she's looking to make a return on those shares. So we actively, manage that and have a dialogue with that shareholder. And we are looking to manage that situation over time. And I'm just going to take one last shareholding, which is from an online attendee. Does today's drop in value of your shares trouble you? There's a one-word answer to that. Actually, yes. I mean, clearly, I don't want to be facetious about it. It's important, and I know, there are people taking part in the meeting who have much more at stake in the company than I do, and obviously the drop in the share price in response to our trading announcement today is upsetting for me as it is for them. All I would do, I think, is reiterate the points that we've made in this meeting. Is we have, over the last 12 months, through a pandemic, continued to invest in the business, and we've considerably expanded our product range. We've put new high-value products out into the market. We found new customers. We're starting to break into North America. We're working in Australia. We're building business in the UK. We've expanded our sales team by bringing Eve on, and so we feel, we as a board have confidence that we have the right things in place to grow the business. But for a business that's very highly dependent on government contracts in the international market, we are dependent on those contracts happening and on people committing funds and spending them, and that is happening slowly at the moment. But that doesn't alter the fact that we have every confidence in the product range, in the offering that we're taking to market. We're looking forward to demonstrating that to those of you that are in the room, and of that forming the platform for us to take the company forward. And that's very much what we're committed to doing. So as we've seen me run out of questions online, I think I'll bring the question and answer period to an end, if I may. So thank you for those that participated in that. I'd like now to move on to the formal business of the meeting. Would shareholders present in person and any corporate representatives present please raise their hands so I can see those constituting the meeting? Thank you. Has everyone signed their attendance register? Good. And so I know that we have a quorum of shareholders present. As you know, today's meeting was called by notice of annual general meeting dated 6th of December 2021. The notice contains details of ordinary resolutions, and today's meeting will be called to consider, and if thought fit, pass those resolutions. The actual terms of the resolutions are set out in full in the notice, and unless any member has any objections, I propose to take the notice as read. Please note that as per the... Sorry? I'm going to go through this here. Please note, as per the notice, voting on the resolutions proposed at today's meetings will be conducted by way of a poll after all 5 resolutions have been proposed to the meeting. The first resolution, an ordinary resolution, is to receive and adopt the financial statements for the year ending 30th September 2021, together with the reports of the directors, including the strategic report and the auditors. I now propose that the financial statements for the year ended 30 September 2021 be received and adopted. Resolution number 2 is an ordinary resolution to receive and adopt the remuneration report contained within the annual report for the year ended 30 September 2021. I now propose that the remuneration report contained within the annual report for the year ended 30 September 2021 be received and adopted. Resolution 3 deals with my own re-election to the board, and as such I shall briefly vacate the chair and hand over to Vince Dury.
So Resolution 3 seeks to authorise the re-election of Bill Moore as a director of the company. Bill retires in accordance with the recommendations of the UK Corporate Governance Code, and being eligible, he is offering himself for re-election at this annual general meeting. I now propose that Bill Moore is re-elected as a director of the company. I will now hand the chair back to Bill.
Thank you, Vince. Resolution 4 seeks to authorise the re-election of Richard Lever, Dr. Richard Lever, as the director of the company. Richard retires in accordance with the recommendations of the UK Corporate Governance Code, and being eligible is offering himself for re-election at this annual general meeting. I now propose that Dr. Richard Lever is re-elected as the director of the company. Finally, Resolution 5 seeks to reappoint BDO LLP as auditors and to authorise the directors to fix their remuneration. I now propose this resolution to the meeting. What I will do now is to hand over to Gervase Cox of Neville Registrars, who will explain and conduct the poll process and answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Gervase.
Thank you, Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Gervase Cox and I am here from Neville Registrars Limited, the company's registrar. And I'm entrusted this afternoon with the task of conducting the poll on 5 ordinary resolutions and certifying the results of the vote to the chair of the meeting. Proxy cards were dispatched to all shareholders prior to the meeting. Many of you may have already completed and returned them, thereby appointing either the chairman of the meeting or your appointed proxy to cast your vote for you. I have here a summary of the scores from the proxy cards received prior to the meeting, which indicates what the outcome of a poll would be if no additional votes were to be cast. And I will use this as the starting point for counting the votes. Please note that if you have previously completed and returned your proxy card and do not wish to change your vote, there is no need for you to take any further action on this poll as your vote has already been counted. I'm available to answer any questions which any of you may have regarding the completion of poll cards. Please raise your hand if you would like a poll card. Thank you. In which case, as no further poll cards were submitted, the results of the poll are as follows. Resolution 1 is an ordinary resolution for the adoption of the company's accounts for the year ended 30th September 2021, together with the director's report, including the strategic report and auditor's report. The votes in favour were 15,708,019 shares, representing 99.96% of the vote, and the votes in favour were 7,000 shares, representing 0.04%. Resolution 2 is an ordinary resolution to approve the director's remuneration report in the form set out in the company's annual report. The votes in favour were 15,675,488 in favour, representing 99.8% of the votes cast. And the votes against were 32,031, representing 0.2% of the votes cast. Resolution 3 is an ordinary resolution for the election of William Moore as a director of the company. In accordance with the Articles of Association of the company, he is required to retire by rotation and, being eligible, offers himself for election. The votes in favour were 15,666,855, representing 99.69% in favour. The votes against were 48,164, representing 0.31% against. Resolution 4 is an ordinary resolution for the re-election of Dr. Richard Lever as a director of the company. In accordance with the Articles of Association of the company, he is now required to retire by rotation and, being eligible, offers himself for re-election. The votes in favour were as follows: 15,666,855 shares in favour, and representing 99.69% of the vote, and against 48,164 shares, representing 0.31% of the vote. Finally, Resolution 5 is an ordinary resolution for the appointment of BDO LLP as auditor and to authorise the directors to fix their remuneration. Companies Act 2006 requires auditors to be appointed at each general meeting at which accounts are laid before the company to hold office until the next such meeting, and BDO LLP have indicated their willingness to continue in office for a further year. Votes in favour were 15,682,988, representing 99.8% of the votes cast, and the votes against were 32,031, representing 0.2% of the votes cast. Now hand back to.
Thank you, Gervais. I can therefore declare that resolutions have been duly passed, which concludes the formal business of the meeting, and I can declare it closed. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending, both those of you that have been able to make the journey up to Loughborough, and those that joined online. I'm going to hand back to Paul Brotherhood, who set up the online platform for us, just to close that out, and then we'll arrange for the visitors here to have a demonstration of some of our new systems. Paul.
Bill, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for everyone for attending both online and physically. Could I please ask the attendees online not to close the session? You'll be automatically redirected for your opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the board can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a moment to do, and I'm sure the company will be very grateful for your feedback. On behalf of the board of ImageScan Holdings PLC, I'd like to thank you for attending today's annual general meeting. That concludes today's session. Thank you and good afternoon to you all.